Good afternoon and welcome to the Minneapolis City Planning Commission meeting of September 15, 2014. My name is Ted Tucker. I serve as president of the Planning Commission. Joining me today are Commissioners Kronzer, Brown, Lipke-Peer, Gisselman, Slack, and Forney. At this time, please be sure that all your electronic devices are put on silent, as I will do right now. The first item of business is to approve the actions from the meeting of August 25, 2014. May I have a motion to approve those actions? Any discussion? None. All in favor say aye. Opposed? Those are approved. The next item on our agenda is to approve the agenda. I will go through the 10 items on the blue agenda that I hope you have found outside on the table, and find out if people want to speak to any of these. I'll go through them one by one. Item number 1, Cedar Cultural Center Plaza, 416 Cedar Avenue North, will be continued to the meeting of October 14th, 2014. Item number 2, street vacation at 1100 through 1112 Quincy Street Northeast. Is there anyone here to speak in opposition to or modify the staff recommendation on item number 2? If not, we will put that on consent. Item number 3 is Omar's Auto Repair, 118 through 122 East Lake Street. Is there anyone here wishing to speak in opposition to or modify the staff recommendation on item number 3? If not, that also goes on consent. Item number 4 we will discuss. Item number 4, by the way, is Neighborhood Health Source Clinic and Corporate Offices, 2301 Central Avenue Northeast. Item number 5, Krause Anderson Corporation Headquarters, 501 8th Street Southeast, 502 9th Street South, and 811 5th Avenue South, has been withdrawn. So we'll deal with that in due course. Item number 6 is the Nicollet Island East Bank Small Area Plan, beyond consent, unless someone wants to speak in opposition to or modify the staff recommendation. Okay, that will be on consent. Item number 7 is the St. Anthony East Neighborhood Small Area Plan. Same thing, that'll be on consent unless someone wishes to speak in opposition to or modify the staff recommendation. I don't see anyone. And number 8, another small area plan, Sheridan Neighborhood. Again, that will be on consent unless someone wishes to speak in opposition to or modify the staff recommendation. Seeing no one, I will put that on consent. Number 9 is a zoning code text amendment about secondhand goods in the C3A district. Is there anyone here wishing to speak in opposition to or modify the staff recommendation on item number 9? We'll put that on consent as well. And item number 10 is zoning code text amendment to revise off-street parking in the University Area Overlay District. Is there anyone wishing to speak in opposition to or modify the staff recommendation on item number 10? I don't see anyone. So we have items for hearing and discussion. Item number 4. Items on the consent agenda are 2, 3, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Item to be continued is number 1, and item to be withdrawn is item number 5. So, may I have a motion to approve the agenda as amended? Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Okay, that is our agenda. We have no report from the committee of the whole or action items, so we will move on to the public hearing. First, we will deal with the one item to be withdrawn. May I have a motion to accept the withdrawal of item number 5? Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Thank you. Next is items to be continued. May I have a motion to continue item number 1 to the meeting of October 14th, 2014? Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Okay, that item will be continued. We'll move now to the items on the consent agenda. Once again, items number 2, 3, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Is there anyone wishing to speak in opposition to or modify the staff recommendation on those items? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing. I ask for a motion to approve staff recommendation for those items on the consent agenda. Any discussion? Okay. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? The consent agenda is approved, and we move now to our one item for discussion. That's item number 4, Neighborhood Health Source Clinic and Corporate Offices. And we will hear a staff report from Lisa Steiner. Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. There are 8 applications before you tonight for the Neighborhood Health Source Clinic at 2301 Central Avenue Northeast. Is that working for you guys? I guess it's not. Oh, okay. Okay. Sorry. There are 8 applications before you tonight for the Neighborhood Health Source Clinic at 2301 Central Avenue Northeast and 949 23rd Avenue Northeast. There's 7 variances in site plan review. The applicant is proposing a 13,750 square foot 2-story clinic building. Just for some background, the property is zoned C1 Neighborhood Commercial District and is within the pedestrian oriented overlay district. The surrounding property along Central, it's mostly commercial uses, but there is residential facing 23rd, 24th, and Polk Street. Let's see. The majority of the block, however, is made up of a Wells Fargo bank, their drive-through, and their associated parking lot. The applicant is proposing to demolish the existing building and construct a approximately 13,000 square foot 2-story clinic building. Their on-site parking would be located, let me grab a site plan for you. Their on-site parking would be located to the rear of the building, about 8 spaces would be there, and then associated parking lot across the alley, that 949 23rd Avenue Northeast parcel would also have 8 spaces. So this proposal requires 7 variances. The first variance is to increase the maximum size of a commercial use in the C1 district from 8,000 square feet to 13,756 square feet. The next variance is to decrease the minimum off-street parking requirement from the required 19 spaces to the proposed 16 spaces. There's also a variance of the pedestrian-oriented overlay district standards to allow the building to be set back 9 feet 8 inches from their corner lot line on 23rd Avenue Northeast. And then there's 3 variances. Let's get this in the right spot. For this proposed sign, which would be on the north elevation of the building, which would be the non-primary building wall. And then there's 1 variance of the sign area for this decorative heart that's part of the logo sign on the south elevation. So staff has recommended approval of the first 2 variances, the variance of the maximum size in the C1 district and the variance of the off-street parking requirement. And I can address any questions you have about those, but I'm mostly going to focus on the variances for which we've recommended denial. So first, the variance of the pedestrian-oriented overlay district standard for building placement. The PO district requires that buildings must be placed within 8 feet of their property line, and if you're on a corner lot, then you have to be 8 feet from both street-facing, both corner lot lines. And in addition, as you're familiar with, the site plan review standards also require that buildings be placed within 8 feet of their property line. So as you know, there's 3 findings that are required to grant variance, the first of which is practical difficulties exist in complying with the ordinance because of circumstances unique to the parcel. As you read in the staff report, staff did not find that there were any practical difficulties in complying with the ordinance. There's also significant policy and ordinance guidance for that 8-foot standard. So staff thought that there were many redesign options that could achieve the 8-foot standard, they could either shift the building south 20 inches or change the indented entrance design to meet that 8-foot standard. Next, I'll talk about the sign variances. Let me go back to this sign. So this is the sign on the north elevation that is a non-primary building wall. So the proposed sign is approximately 55 square feet. So there's one variance for the location on the non-primary building wall. There's a variance for the amount of area on this wall from the allowed 0 square feet to the proposed 55 square feet. Then there's also a variance for the maximum area per sign in the C1 district, which we have established is 45 square feet. So there's the variance from 45 to 55. So that's 3 variances for one sign. Staff is recommending denial of all 3 of the variances, as we did not find that any practical difficulties existed that required the location of this sign on the non-primary building wall, or required the sign to be larger than the allowed 45 square feet. The applicant has other opportunities for adequate signage and could install a projecting sign up to 16 square feet in area, which would face central, or they could install the same sign reduced to 45 square feet onto the Central Avenue facade. And I'll just note that they have not proposed any signage other than the address for the Central Avenue facade, which is a primary building wall. Next, the sign on the south elevation, so that's the heart kind of sculptural sign. That sign is approximately 83 square feet in area as proposed. As I said before, in the C1 district, a sign is allowed to be only 45 square feet in area. The intent for that standard is that the C1 district is a smaller scale neighborhood commercial use, or commercial zoning district, which would not require large signage. Staff also didn't find that there were any practical difficulties in meeting that maximum sign area. And in your packet, I also included this diagram, which shows where 45 square feet would leave that sign if you were to shrink it. Staff found that it would be reasonable to meet the standards in the ordinance and is recommending that the Planning Commission deny that variance. Finally, to discuss the site plan review items, and just to be clear, in the agenda, I think item H is listed as a variance, but it's site plan review, obviously. So the applicant is requesting 3 items of alternative compliance. The first is that building placement, so that's also the requirement of the PO overlay district. So since staff is recommending denial of that variance, we're also recommending that the Planning Commission not grant alternative compliance for that building placement. The second item of alternative compliance being requested is compatibility of materials and appearance. The building is mostly precast concrete panel and brick. However, on the east facade, the side that faces the on-site parking lot, the applicant has not incorporated any brick, although all the other sides of the building incorporate brick. So staff is also not recommending that the Planning Commission grant alternative compliance for that, and instead has included a condition of approval that 10% of that elevation be brick, or at least 10%. Finally, the window requirement, as you know, 30% of the first floor walls facing a on-site parking lot are required to be windows. The applicant's proposal is only 26% windows on the first floor. However, because the applicant is providing windows in excess of their requirement for the second floor, as well as along the north elevation and additional landscaping, staff found that it was reasonable to grant alternative compliance for that standard. So with that, I can take any questions.
Okay, let's see. Commissioners, Commissioner Gesselman.
Lisa, I just had one question, and this may be for my benefit only, but can you just explain what we mean when we use this phrase non-primary building wall?
Sure. A non-primary building wall is a wall of the building that faces a street or an on-site parking lot. So when it's a non-primary building wall, it doesn't face the street or a parking lot that is owned by or on-site. Yeah.
Commissioner Kronzer.
Just a question on the requirement to include 10% brick on the east side. How did you come up with 10%, and about how much would that be?
It would be about 200 square feet of brick, and the 10%, we evaluated all the percentages around all the different elevations of what they had already proposed, and I believe the north elevation was approximately 11% brick, and so 10% was just an even number to be similar to that north elevation.
Okay, Commissioner Lipke here, did you have a question? No, okay. Any others? Commissioner Slack.
Thank you. Quick question. Does this sound really loud? Maybe I'll just yell. Public Works, have they reviewed the parking layout for the proposal?
They have reviewed, they've gone through preliminary development review, so they've the applicant has talked to Public Works. From our initial talks, Public Works was not supportive of the introduction of a new curb cut to enter the on-site parking lot. So the existing alley access was the preferred option by Public Works. So that was that I mentioned in the staff report was part of the reason why they were missing a few parking spaces.
I'll try to not to be too loud, but the adjacent parcel, Parcel B, seems woefully inefficient from how automobiles access and then subsequently probably back out into the alley to get out of that space. How does that Parcel B currently function now?
That's mostly the existing condition. It's not striped right now, so the only proposal to change is to do the striping where they've placed it on the site plan. And because these are, the parcels are separated by the public alley, it's not considered one zoning lot. So the site plan review was really focused on the 2301 Central parcel. And then it's essentially just an accessory parking lot that we considered based on our design and maintenance standards of parking lots.
And then my last question, is partially the reason for the building to be set back increased because of the need for accessible entries?
I think that's part of the intent, but I'll let the applicant speak to whether that's actually a necessity. That was not included in their application materials, that was the reason for the indent. It was more of an architectural feature.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, other questions, commissioners? Okay, thank you very much. Just for those who arrived a little after 4:30, we have now dealt with all items except for item number 4, which we are discussing. So everything else has been approved per staff recommendation. So I will open the public hearing and ask first to hear from the applicant on this item.
I'll just leave it for you.
Mr. President, members of the commission, my name is Darren Lazan. I'm with Landform Professional Services. We actually are the applicant on the item before you tonight, but we represent Neighborhood Health Source and Central Clinic in their quest to build a new clinic. With me tonight as well are members of the design team, RSP Architects, Bill Whitrock. Should any questions about the building come up. Also Steve Knutson and Matt Parton are in attendance as well. They're the executive director of Neighborhood Health Source and the project manager on the project. I first wanted to take an opportunity to thank staff for their work on this project. Actually, Lisa's been tremendous to work with. We had a very challenging schedule, very challenging budget, and a very challenging site. And it's been really a pleasure to work with her on this specific project, and want to thank her for her time on that. Neighborhood Health Source has a roughly 50-year history in the area, specifically in Northeast, providing healthcare to the underinsured and uninsured and underinsured in the community. They are a nonprofit organization. They were beneficiaries of a grant received on relatively short notice. And as I mentioned, we're on a very tight budget, tight timeline to exercise that grant and construct this new facility at 2301. I wanted to be respectful of your time, so maybe just quickly address the items in the variances and then stand for any questions. First and foremost, the site plan review or site plan approval, we agree with all the conditions that staff has added to that. We can accommodate the brick on the back and deal with those conditions. We have essentially 2 sets of variances, one for the signage and one for the setback that I'd like to address. First being the signage. The owner, we had, after receiving the staff report, we had a considerable amount of time we spent reviewing Lisa's findings and working through the conditions, and the owner has specifically requested that we present our argument for the signage on the north side of the building. specifically because of their relocation from the north. A tremendous amount of their traffic comes pedestrian and transit. They're going to be 3 blocks south. There is a fair amount of concern with their relocation that folks need to find them. And they felt for that reason the signage on the north face of the building was critical to their mission, providing that those services to the community. So we respectfully request your consideration of those. We can, however, bring that square footage down to 45 square feet, the required max square footage. So I think we can drop one of those variances, if I'm not mistaken, from that request. So we would do a 45 square foot sign on that north edge if the Planning Commission was so inclined to approve our variance. The second is for the site plan component discussed earlier. And again, we met at a fair amount of discussion on that component. The owner again, and actually the neighborhood associations, both Holland and Wyndham, had fairly strong support for a couple of our variances, this signage one in particular and our setback as well, which I'll address in a minute. But we did go back and look through that again when the architect worked through a number of configurations, and we actually came back with a slightly smaller component, and I have an exhibit of that as well. Reducing that to a little under 60 square feet. So I guess we would respectfully request your consideration of a reduced variance on that item to 60 feet, which is a 15-foot increase over the allowable 45. So we would have 3 signs on that face, 2 compliant signs, the Central Clinic sign and the Neighborhood Health Source sign, and 1 in excess of the 45 square feet allowed. So I believe that's just 1 variance for that 1 sign. Last item that we're asking for your consideration on tonight is this setback issue, and we would like to raise what we believe, again, in careful consideration. I can tell you we spent a tremendous amount of time working through the site plan in this regard. And we believe we have a demonstrated practical difficulty with meeting that setback. The first being the fact that our south and west boundaries are not right angles. They're acute angles. They're tighter than 90 degrees. So even if we had a perfectly rectangular building to front those 2 sides, we would lose roughly 2 feet along the length of that property. So we'd be down to 6 feet if we held the Central Avenue side, which we assume most folks would want the Central Avenue side held. The second is a pretty substantial topographic difference between the front and the back of the site, which drives that front stairway to be 4 feet above grade to provide accessible access to the site. We have to hold that 4-foot grade, which requires a fair amount of ramps and compliant ramps to get access to the front door. So you see the predominant space on the south side of the building are those accessible ramps. They travel down from the parking lot to the public way, back up again to the front door. After those ramps come in, you have not a lot of leftover space in our configuration today. If we were to give up the 1'7", again, we'd have even less to make that transition. So we feel that the topography of the site is a practical difficulty in compliance. The third, to a lesser extent, is the use. This is not a storefront, coffee shop, or otherwise. This is a healthcare facility. I don't think it's all that conducive to have that immediate relationship between the sidewalk and the exam room. So we think it becomes difficult to provide that street front connection. And finally, the intent of the ordinance, we believe, is to create that hard urban edge. And if you look at the elevations in place, sorry, come back again. There's a series of retaining walls, again, to make up that grade difference right out on the property line at that curb edge. There's an architectural component around the glass atrium space at that corner. We believe we have met the intent of the ordinance to provide a little harder urban edge at that corner. And I did not delve much into the architecture. We can if you have questions or interest there, but the majority of the budget on exterior architectural finishes was spent at this corner. This glass piece, that atrium, the canopy, the brick, those architectural components, including the walls out at the property line, that's where the the bang was. That's where the dollars were spent, and that's where that energy is. So we pulled that as tight as we could to the street sidewalk edge. We still have to provide a practical access to the front door, so we have those retaining walls and so forth in there. So we, again, believe that that the intent of the ordinance is met. So again, on that 8-foot setback issue, we have pretty strong neighborhood support on that front. We believe the practical difficulty is the acute angle of that property, most significantly the 4-foot topographic change from back to front of the site. And again, I think it's meets the intent of the ordinance and it's conducive to the use proposed. So that will stand for any questions, as I promised. I know we're the only item we have today, but
Okay, let's see if we
anything
have
else
any
comes up,
questions
we'll be glad
here.
to move forward.
Commissioners, Commissioner Kronzer?
Can you tell me what the color of the precast you're thinking about for this?
I can bring Bill up for a more detailed answer, but that is a natural concrete color. It's a finished, architectural finish on the concrete, but there's no color added to the precast panels.
Okay, other questions? Other questions? I don't see any. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, are there others wishing to speak on item number 4? Come on up and give your name and address for the record, please. Anyone else wishing to speak on item number 4? Oh, you need to speak up here at the microphone, please, so we can get you on tape.
I wasn't sure if I understood your question correctly, if it's now the time for the audience to
Yes, it is.
raise the voice. Okay. So my name is Michaela Bauer, and I'm actually right on the east side that would face their parking lot.
What's that address?
2300 Polk Street Northeast.
Thank you.
Okay. And my concern is the increase in traffic that will happening with a building like this, as well as not having a sufficient amount of parking spaces available for the amount of individuals seeking healthcare in the central clinic. Parking already is a problem on 2300 Polk Street. A lot of trash is seen daily on the street that has to be picked up. My driveway is right on the fence of the east side of that building. So I'm very concerned about my property value, my neighbors. I'm also concerned about the fact that a residential neighborhood might turn into be too commercialized. And I also went to the neighborhood meeting, of course. Another concern that raised up for me afterwards was the hours of the clinic. I believe the hours of the clinic are spent to be longer than 5 p.m. in the afternoon. I'm not exactly sure what the new hours will be, but I do believe that this is quite a strain to take for the neighborhood. So that's what I have to say. Thank you.
Okay, are any questions, commissioners? I don't see any. Anyone else wishing to speak on this matter? Come on up now. This is the public hearing. Okay, I don't see anyone else, in which case I will close the public hearing. Now, let's see, we do have 8 applications in front of us. The size of the commercial space, the parking requirement, the setback of the building, more than 8 feet, 3 dealing with one sign, another with another sign, the heart, and the site plan review with 7 conditions, which we've heard the applicant is okay with. So, Commissioner Brown?
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll start with items A and B. That is the variance for the square footage and the variance for the off-street parking requirement. And I'll move approval of items A and B, B with 1 condition for a minimum of 7 bicycle parking spaces.
Okay, moved and seconded A and B per staff recommendation. Any other discussion on that? Okay, I don't see any. Clerk, please call a roll on A and B.
Bender? Why am I so loud? It seems loud over here. Brown. Forney. Gagnon. Gisselman. Kronzer. Lipke-Pier. Slack. So that is 8-0.
Okay, those are approved. Commissioner Brown, on maybe the next three variances?
Yeah, I'll start with variance C, and that's the variance for the maximum setback of 8 feet, and I'll move denial of that variance.
Okay, it's been moved to deny per staff recommendation. Is there a second on that motion? Okay, moved and seconded. Discussion on that? Did you want to speak to that?
Yeah, I'm just a little bit concerned since it is a fairly small amount. I'm concerned about the precedent we might set. I think in the pedestrian overlay district, we really want to encourage buildings framing the street. And if we get too far beyond 8 feet beyond the property line, we start to move away from that.
Commissioner Lipke-Pier?
I actually had a question for staff, really briefly. Can you explain where, since the street appears to go at an angle to the building, where the setback is measured from? Is it from the corner, or is it strictly parallel to the street edge, or what is the setback?
The setback is to the property line. So yeah, the property line kind of skews. Try to zoom in for you. Oh. So you can see they've drawn the hatched line is the 8-foot setback. So they are meeting it for most of the building wall until about here. Then it starts to deviate because the building is square.
So the building is square, but the setback's parallel to the street, so that's why it's kind of at an angle a little bit?
Well, the setback would be parallel to the property line.
Okay,
So
well,
that's why it doesn't follow.
Right.
Yeah, sorry.
oh, that's okay. And so a majority of the building that is not meeting this is primarily just that front corner glazed area.
Yes, from here to like around here.
And if it appears as though, like, excuse me, from my perspective, that the building still kind of is canted a little bit off the property line through the rest of the building, so it starts out as being at the mark, and then it kind of tapers greater and greater till it gets to that point. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that would be accurate. I think they might be a little bit even closer than 8 feet at the very end of the building, or the very east side.
So then, is it possible then for you, I don't know if you know this or not, what is the actual setback of the glazed lobby from the brick facade of just the building itself? Like if it had been continuous with the brick, for example, it still wouldn't meet the setback at that corner, but how much farther is it because it's set in?
It's probably 1 or 2 inches different just to that brick, just because of the tapering, depending on where that line is. But I can answer that maybe.
Yeah, sorry, I'm just curious because I just.
Can I clarify that?
Please do.
Yes.
Sorry about that. So appreciate the opportunity to do that because I think it gets fairly complicated. So that the angle of this street is at a right angle, so it gets closer and closer to our building as we go down the street. So we started with this point right here and set that on the 8-foot mark. And then as you travel east, it gets closer and closer and closer to the street, where it finishes at about roughly 6 feet here. So the average setback along that entire edge is well under 8 feet. The only portion of the site that we're proposing to be outside of the setback is the glass portion from here to here. You can see where it jogs in. It's a very important architectural component to set that glass back from that edge. If you look at, I'm sorry to bounce back and forth like this.
What dimension does it jog in at?
What's that?
How far does it jog back?
1'7".
Okay.
So there's just enough relief to create that architectural component. So we set this point right here on the 8 foot, and then it goes 7 down to 6 feet as you travel down the length of the building. So just this portion is beyond 8.
Thank you.
While you're up here, a question. The canopy sticks out a little bit beyond the brick, is that correct?
Correct, and that was the intent component that we had. The canopy comes out here into the setback on both sides and then back again. So that piece is in the setback, as well as the retaining walls that you see in the elevation that are all the way along.
Are the retaining walls at the property line?
They're right on the property line,
Okay.
or just inside the property line. So that front is held at that corner.
Okay. Commissioner Kronzer, you had a question? A comment? Okay.
I do think that the skew of the property is a practical difficulty. Sorry, I was trying to not move the microphone. I do think the skew is an issue here, especially with the canopy and the retaining walls holding that edge. I would hate to see just a plain box of a building if we deny this variance request.
Commissioner Lipke here.
Yeah, I concur with Commissioner Kronzer on this one. I think that the intent is there. I think that there is a little bit of a special circumstance here given the skew of the property line in the street. And I think that it meets the intent based on the wall and the canopy and the setback just at that corner actually might make for a more inviting pedestrian experience given the transparency and the glazing. So I will be not supporting this motion.
Okay, are there other comments? Commissioner Gisselman?
I would agree with Commissioner Kronzer and Commissioner Lipke here, and I realize that I actually was the one who seconded Commissioner Brown's initial motion, but considering the explanation, the further explanation that we just got, I also won't support that form of the motion.
The commissioner, the second just gets the item up for discussion, doesn't? You don't have to stick with it. So, other comments on the motion to deny on application C? Okay, please call the roll on that unless someone wants to suggest a substitute motion. I guess not. Too complicated. We'll call a roll on that.
Slack. Lipke Pier. Kronzer. Gisselman. Gagnon. Forney. Brown. Bender. So 7-1, no.
Okay, that fails. Should we try it again? This time approving the setback?
Sure.
Commissioner Brown.
I'll make a motion
Right
to approve variance C, that is the setback variance.
And I think we have findings of the acute angle at the corner and the intent to hold the corner with the wall and the canopy. Does that sound sufficient? Okay, clerk, please call the roll on that. Oh, do I have a second on that? Do we? Okay, any other discussion? Okay, please call the roll.
Bender. Brown. Forney. Gagnon. Gisselman. Kronzer. Lipke Pier. Slack. So that's 8-0.
Okay, the setback is approved as applied for. Commissioner Brown, you want to continue with D, E, and F?
I will.
Noting that the applicant was okay with a smaller sign.
Yeah, and variances D, E, and F, those all pertain to the proposed sign on the north wall. And I'll move denial of all of those, D, E, and F.
Okay, move to deny. Is there a second on that? Okay, moved and seconded. Commissioner Kronzer?
Yeah, I have a question for staff. If there was an approval for a sign on the north elevation, is there still sign budget for sign on the Central Avenue elevation?
So would they still be allowed to put a sign on? Yes, there would be. It's based on each building wall separately.
Further comments, questions? You want to speak on this, Commissioner Brown?
Yeah, I'm just a little bit concerned about the precedent this might set for other properties in the C1 district. Not only is the proposed sign a little bit larger than what the code allows, but I don't think there's a practical difficulty there just because they do have an opportunity to display signage on the Central Avenue frontage, not only a 45 square foot wall sign, but also a projecting sign that could be visible from traffic coming from the north. And that would be similar to what other properties along that corridor are allowed and have.
Okay, further discussion? I don't see any. The motion is to deny. Let's see, what are we at? D, E, and F. Clerk, please call the roll.
Bender? Brown? Forney? Gagnon? Gisselman? Kranzer? Lipke-Pier? Slack? So that's 8-0.
Okay, those are denied. Application G, Commissioner Brown?
Yes, on variance G, and that relates to the proposed sign on the south building elevation, and I will move denial of that variance.
Okay, move denial. Is there a second? Moved and seconded. The discussion on that?
Yes, and as with the other sign variance, I'm just a little bit concerned about allowing a significantly larger sign than the code allows. I don't think there's a practical difficulty there. I think a 45 square foot sign on that wall is sufficient.
Okay, further discussion? Okay, moved and seconded to deny item G. Clerk, please call the roll.
Slack? Lipke-Pier? Kranzer? Gisselman? Gagnon? Forney? Brown? And Bender? So that is 6-2.
Okay, that is denied. We move on to item H, the site plan review. Commissioner Brown?
And on item H, the site plan review, I will move approval with the 7 stated conditions.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion on that? Commissioner Kranzer?
Yeah, I have another question for staff. How'd you guess? All right, so this 10% on the east side. Can we go back to, can you pull up the elevation for us, the colored one? So you said that the north side was similarly at 11%, but that elevation is much larger. Do we know how many square feet of brick is proposed on the north side?
About 980, if I remember right.
180, close enough. Okay, I guess my sense is that we should have more brick on the east side and maybe that it should engage the corner on the north side. I'm hesitant with the gray standard color concrete. We live in Minnesota, and in the wintertime, that's going to look abysmal, as we all know. But so I would advocate for more brick on the east side and maybe a little more brick on the north side. Commissioners?
Do you have some numbers to go with that little more? 15%?
How about 20% on the east and 5 more on the north?
Okay, bringing it to 15 on the north. And what does that get us to on the east? 20. Is that what your intent is? 15 on the north and 20 on the east? Okay. Commissioner Brown, you have a comment?
Yes, I'd just like to modify my motion on related to condition number 3 on the site plan review. I would propose that we strike that because we did approve the variance for the setback of greater than 8 square feet.
Okay, I think that makes sense. We will do that. You have a motion to change the percentages on condition 4, right? To 15 and 20. Did we get a second on that, changing the percentages? Moved and seconded.
So that would be at least 20% on the east elevation and at least 15% on the north elevation. With the intent to incorporate brick around the corner of the northeast corner, I will add.
Around the corner.
Correct.
Okay, is that understood? All right. Any further discussion on the amendment to condition 4? Did you want to ask a question of the applicant? Otherwise, our public hearing is closed. Did you have a question to clarify that motion?
I did, and I apologize.
Not an argument, a clarification.
No, I understand that the public hearing is closed. I'm just asking if we could consider alternate materials and not specifically brick, if there's green wall opportunities or other materials. Understand the concern to break up the concrete wall. It's just we leave with that site plan approval contingency and we're stuck. Architecturally, it becomes difficult to manage that. So is there an alternate material? Can we have staff put it back in staff's hands to approve at least 15% and another, I forgot what the motion was, X% in alternate materials rather than specifically brick, because it's a challenge for the architects to work that out.
See what the maker of the motion thinks about that idea. Mr. Kronzer?
I'm certainly sensitive to budgets on nonprofits and small organizations, but I think this is a facade that's facing residential and it's very visible given the fact that you have the parking lot on this property, the alley, and then another parking lot. So it's very visible. So I think I'm going to stick with.
Okay, let's deal with your amendment.
And if I could just follow
Yes.
up on that, Mr. President, that the site plan review standard that's really being reinforced here is the call for compatibility on all sides, which Commissioner Kronzer's motion gets at.
Okay, so we're at the 15 and 20% motion. Is that correct? Any further discussion on that? All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Okay, that is approved and added, or condition 4 is modified. Any other discussion on the site plan review and 7 conditions? If not, I'll have the clerk call the roll, please.
Bender, Brown, Forney, Gagnon, Kisselman, Kranzer, Lipke-Pier, Slack. So it's 8-0.
Okay, that's approved with 6 conditions because condition 3 has been deleted and item 4 has been substantially changed. I think that takes care of this item, does it not? Okay, thank you very much. That concludes our business for tonight. Mr. Wittenberg, any announcements?
Committee of the Whole this Thursday is a joint meeting with HPC. We'll be joined by new CPED Executive Director Craig Taylor, and we also have a executive committee meeting in advance of that.
Okay, any other announcements folks want to make? If not, we are adjourned. Our next meeting is, when is that? The 29th of September. Thank you all. For those of you who arrived late, all the other items were approved as recommended on consent agenda.